Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jamie and I'm a senior software engineer. And today we're going to be going over JavaScript objects and how to clone them properly. So the reason that I'm doing a tutorial on this is because recently I experienced some issues on the field and I figured, hey, you know what, let me make a video about it. So that way you guys can understand what is the best way to actually do this. Now, if you like this kind of content, make sure you guys support me by giving me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel, make sure you hit that bell for notifications, comment below if you have any questions or comments, and let's get started. Great, so we're going to start here with an original object example. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a const. I'm going to call it an example, and it's going to be set up as an object. I'm going to give it a property of name, and this name is just going to be John, and then let's just give it an age of 10. So John is 10 years old. Okay, and now we're going to begin by cloning the wrong way. So wrong way to clone an object. Okay, so if you thought, hey, the easiest way for me to clone this object and manipulate it would be to do something like this, const example clone equals example, and then example clone dot, let's say we're gonna change the age to, I don't know, 24 years old. So now John is 24 years old. Okay, this is the wrong way to do it. So if we console log and I log this example clone, let me explain why. So once I run this, immediately you're going to see everything appears to be fine, right? So I have a object. I was able to manipulate the age and set it to 24. However, by me doing this, if I actually console log the example, which was the original object here, and I run it, you'll notice that the age was also affected on the original object. So the reason this happens is because an object is actually a reference, and what ends up happening is when you say example equals and then whatever the reference is right here, you're pointing to that object in memory. I'm not going to get into the nerdy details, but it just doesn't work. Okay, long story short, it doesn't work. It shouldn't be done. Why? Because it'll end up manipulating the original object. So if you don't expect that behavior, do not do it this way. So let's talk about two other ways of actually cloning an object. So this was the wrong way of doing it. Okay, I'm just going to comment this out. And down here, let's make another comment here, and let's say the shallow clone of an object. Okay, so now we're going to learn about the shallow clone of an object. So how do we do a shallow clone? So again, we're going to say const example clone equals, and then we're going to create an empty object here. Now inside of this empty object, we're going to do a dot 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 followed by the example variable, which is this one up here. And this is called a spreading operator, just so you know. When we use the dot dot dot, it's called a spreading operator. And the whole intent is for us to be able to clone this object. So the way we would do this is, now that we've done that spreading operator, we can do the same kind of thing where we say example.age equals 24. Okay, so now if we did a console.log of the example clone and we run it, you're going to notice that the age is in fact 24 on our clone. Okay, and we get the object back, which is good. And if we do the example, so now we're going to console log this example here, and we run that, the age is 10. So we did in fact achieve a clone of this object by using the spreading operator. Okay, so that's very important. However, this is called a shallow clone. So the reason it's called a shallow clone is because we do not have any nested data in the original object. So in the event that we did have nested data in this original object, things are going to not work again. So a shallow clone only works for very simple objects that do not contain any nested data. Okay, so let's complicate things just a little bit. And in order for us to do that, I'm just going to put a space here and create a const. We're going to call this a nested ARR, which stands for array. And here we're just going to set it as an array. Okay, and in this array, we're going to give it an object. We're going to say title as the property, and the title can be, I don't know, programmer or something. Okay, and now we're going to give it another object in this array, and this is going to say title, and this second title is going to be teacher. Okay, great. So now in the original object over here, we're going to add a nested property, and it's going to be this array up here that's going to be nested. Okay, so let's log this example down here on line 16. And this is the original example now. So now we have nested data in our object. So what happens in the event that we use the spreading operator and do a shallow clone, okay, when we have nested data? So let me show you what's going to happen. So down here, we're going to say example clone dot nested. And then we're just going to call the first element, and we're going to change the title from programmer. We're going to change it to engineer. Okay. So now over here in the console log, we're going to console log this shallow clone, and we're going to run it. And once we do that, you'll notice that it works. We have an engineer inside of the nested data. However, what happens when we log the example now? So let me erase this console, run it again, and when we log the example, oh no, we have engineer. Okay, that's not what we wanted, right? So it affected the original nested data. We wanted it to say programmer, not engineer. So here again, we ended up modifying the original object, and that is not what we want. So that's why we do not use a shallow clone when there's nested data. Okay, so that being said, I am going to show you guys what you should be doing in the event that you have nested data and you need to clone the object. So here we're going to call this a deep clone of an object. Okay, so the way you would deep clone an object, and let me just comment this out here because we don't need it any longer. So the way you would deep clone an object is you would say const example clone equals, and then you're going to say json.stringify, and then you're cloning the actual example here. And then around this JSON stringify, you're going to say json.parse. Okay. So what's happening here is this example clone is converting the original example into a string, and then it's reparsing that, and it's setting it to a new variable called example clone. And now by us doing that, that is considered a deep clone, and it will clone even the nested data. Okay, so let's prove this. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to say example clone dot, and then we are going to change the age equal to 100. You know what, let's make it 500. Okay, and now if we log this example clone here and we run it, you'll notice that John's age is now 500, right? And if we did console log for the example and we run that, it did not affect the age. So far so good, right? So now let's talk about the nested data. Oops. So if we wanted to do an example clone dot nested, and then we're going to reference element 0, and we're going to change the title, and we're going to say that it's equal to, instead of programmer, we're going to equal to, I don't know, astronaut. Okay, and once we console log this example clone and we run it, you'll notice that we did in fact change it to astronaut. So far so good. And if we actually change this to example and we console log the original example, it still says programmer. So what you guys learned here is the correct way of cloning a specific JavaScript object and the reason why you should clone it in such a way. And in certain scenarios, it could make sense for you to do a shallow clone of an object. And in other scenarios, it could make sense for you to do a deep clone of an object. But this has been a tutorial on cloning JavaScript objects. If you guys like this kind of content, please make sure that you guys give me a thumbs up, comment below, hit the subscribe and the bell for notifications. I'll be making more content like this depending on if you like it or not. Thanks for watching, guys.